Hello, everyone. I'm Catherine Price. I'm the host of the How to Feel Alive podcast, and I'm delighted to introduce you to today's guest, Nir Eyal. I've been hoping to meet Nir for quite some time now. We're finally connecting. So, Nir, as you may know, is a globally recognized authority on behavior change and human potential. He's a former lecturer at the Stanford Graduate School of Business and the Hasso-Plattner Institute of Design, also at Stanford. And he's collaborated with leaders and organizations all around the world to help people boost performance through behavior design. Most relevantly for us, he is the author of numerous best-selling books, including Hooked and Indistractable. His writing has also been featured all over the place, including the New York Times, Harvard Business Review, The Atlantic, and Psychology Today. And I'm super excited because he has a new book out, which is called Beyond Belief, The Science-Backed Way to Stop Limiting Yourself and Achieve Breakthroughs. It was an instant New York Times bestseller. And in it, he talks about how we can identify and replace hidden beliefs that are defining our limits. So, with that preamble aside, welcome to How to Feel Alive, Nir.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. We've been circling the same topics, and I've been dying to meet you. So I'm so glad that we finally got a chance to do it now.
Yeah, thank you for, writing a book and giving us the opportunity. You could have just, texted or something, but you wrote a book. And now we get to have
I figured,
a
how can I
conversation.
get Catherine's attention? This will work.
Right, and you're a specialist in that. So here we go. That's our first takeaway for everybody. If you want to speak to somebody, just write a book
on something they care about and spend their life work on.
Exactly. So I wanted to start by just asking you, I always like to get context from fellow authors and writers about what led you to write this book. And then in a broader sense, how do you see it fitting in with your other work, with your previous books? So tell me a bit about the story of Beyond Belief.
Sure. So the curiosity for writing on this topic started when I got some unusual phone calls. You see, I do these office hours every week, every Wednesday night. I take an hour, and anybody who's read one of my books can book some time and ask me a question about anything they've read in any of my books. And after I wrote Indistractable, I started getting a call every once in a while, like maybe not every call, but maybe like 1 in 20 calls would sound something like this. Somebody would call me and said, "Hey, Nir, I read Indistractable. I really enjoyed it, but I just want to let you know that it didn't work." And I'd say, "Oh, wow, tell me more. Tell me more. I spent 5 years on it. It has 30 pages of citations to peer-reviewed studies. It's helped me. It's changed my life. I want to know. Let's walk through step by step so we can see where it didn't work for you. So let's talk about step 1, master internal triggers. Okay, how did that go for you? Let's talk about that step. What did you do?" I read it. I read that chapter, and I really liked it. It's just that I didn't do that one. I'd say, "Okay, no problem. I understand. Sometimes people skip a step. Okay, no worries. You probably went to step 2. How did that go?" Yeah. So step two, I definitely read it. Very memorable, but I just didn't do that one either. And so here I paused for a minute. So these people would wait for months to tell the author of a book that they had read that the things they didn't do didn't work.
Right.
So at first I thought, maybe it's probably my fault as an author. Maybe I didn't write it properly, or maybe, I have stupid readers or something. I don't know. Something was going wrong here. And then I realized, wait a minute, actually, I totally do this too. I have books on the shelf written by brilliant people whose advice I didn't put into practice. I've listened to endless podcasts and watched videos of gurus who tell me exactly the right thing to do. And I know they're right. And yet I don't do it. And so
that's a very good point. I'm like reflecting on my own reading habits and feeling a little bit less self-righteous than I had a second ago. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's everybody has this problem. And I wanted to know why. Why is it that in an age where you basically can know anything, right? There's really not that many secrets left anymore. If somebody knows something special, they're dying to get on a podcast to share it with the world, or write a book about it, or make a YouTube video about it, or post it on social media. We love to tell what we know. So there's no more secrets. It's out there. Who doesn't know? Come on. Lose weight, stop using your phone so much, build a business, fix a relationship. Come on. It's all there. Google it. ChatGPT, it's there. So why is it that despite knowing what to do, we don't actually do it? And so what I uncovered, the answer is that it's not good enough to know what to do. It's not good enough to know why we do it, that there's something missing here, that classic economics teaches us about incentives, that if I want someone to do a particular behavior, I need a benefit so that they do the behavior, right? So you've got the You've got your salary, that's the benefit, and then the behavior is your job. So if you set up the right incentive system, people will be motivated. But if that were enough, we would all have six-pack abs and have multi-million-dollar businesses. But that's not enough. There's something missing. What's missing is belief. That if I don't
Hmm.
believe I will get the benefit, for example, let's say I'm working for a boss who I don't believe is going to give me that promotion or give me that raise. Am I going to stay motivated to work for that person for very long? Probably not. Conversely, if I don't believe I can do the behavior, you know what? Breaking up with my cell phone, that's too hard. I don't think I can do that. Well, then guess what? You're right. You won't do it. And so
Mm-hmm.
underlying benefit and behavior is belief. Motivation is a triangle, not a straight line. And once I realized that I had to dive deeper into, I think, what limits people's ability to actually carry out the things they know they should do, that they want to do for themselves, but don't do. And the secret is, of course, the power.
Oh, well, thank you for that was a great way to kick off. I want to encourage everybody listening, based on what you just said, to actually use this episode for yourself by taking a second right now to think about something that you've always said you want to do, but for some reason you haven't done it. Whether it's breaking up with your, excuse me, whether it's breaking up with your phone or something, or losing weight, whatever. Let's not go with losing weight. We're so cliche. Let's not do that. But something else you want to achieve. And just keep that in mind as you're listening to Nir's talk today, because I think that I'm personally excited to take some of what you're saying and put into immediate practice afterwards. So I wanted to jump in with a question I know that you talk about all the time, which is very simply laying the groundwork of how do you define belief? Because that's a
Yeah,
question I had when I first saw the book. And I know obviously you go into a very precise definition of what it is and how it differs from other similar words. So can you explain that to us?
I love it. A fellow word nerd.
I am a
We're cut
word
from the
nerd.
same
I am
cloth.
guilty.
Yeah. So let's get precise here. So a belief is not a fact. A fact is an objective truth. It is something that is true whether or not you believe in it. The world is more like a sphere than it is flat. Sorry, flat earthers, the world doesn't care what you think. This is a fact, and we cannot change facts. On the other end of the spectrum is faith. Faith is a conviction that does not require evidence. God rewards the righteous. There's no amount of evidence that someone could use to persuade someone not to have that faith, and nor should they. It's a matter of faith, personal faith. But in between faith and fact is what we call a belief. A belief is defined as a conviction that is open to revision based on new evidence. And what makes beliefs so special is that unlike faith, which people almost never change, and unlike facts, which you cannot change, beliefs are malleable. And so the big takeaway from the book, what unlocked so much in me and reduced my suffering and makes me so much happier in life and so much more motivated to persist in things that are important to me, whether it's fixing broken relationships, whether it's working on my personal health, whether it's breaking up and managing my relationship with my cell phone, whatever it is, I'm so much more motivated and suffer less doing these things because I can use my beliefs as tools, not truths. That's the big takeaway of this book. That beliefs are tools, not truths. They have a different standard of evidence because they're about predictions for the future. So
Hmm.
many of our problems, our personal problems, our interpersonal problems, even our geopolitical problems, I think, stem from this unfortunate situation we find ourselves in, where too many people think that their faith is a fact and they don't have the intellectual humility to believe that, or to realize that other people might have different faiths that they think are just as strongly held. And that much of what causes us suffering is because we think that things are facts when they are really just beliefs. That so many of the important decisions we make in life, who should I marry? What job should I take? Where should I live? Even the day-to-day decisions of who I should be around and how I should treat the people I love. These are based on beliefs because beliefs fundamentally change three things. They change what you see. We call this the power of attention. They change what you feel. We call this the power of anticipation. And they change what you do, the power of agency. And so once you can use these three powers of belief, you can find the beliefs that serve you rather than hurt you.
Yeah, I want to get into those three pillars in our conversation. But as you're talking and as I was reading the book, it really reminded me of a lot of the work I've done in cognitive behavioral therapy, like CBT, where you're really questioning your own thoughts. Is your thought or your belief about yourself or about the world, is that true?
Right.
Or as you're saying, is it a fact? I guess essentially is what you're asking. Or is it a belief? And if it is a belief, is it a belief you want to hold on to? Is it a belief that actually is backed up by facts? I find that very interesting. I wanted to ask you a bit more before we dive into the specifics about this idea of using beliefs as tools, which I know is the main premise of the book, and what you mean by that, and if you can give a couple of concrete examples of how that might play out in real life.
Sure.
And
Yes.
I should also say, I'm also thinking about this in the context of my work with How to Feel Alive and the people listening here,
Mm,
where so many people are, as you're saying, suffering for many reasons, but feeling a lack of connection or a lack of community, or just feeling like
yeah.
their life is somewhat blah. So you can take that as you will. But just in general, I'm curious about this idea that beliefs are tools and that we can change our beliefs and in so doing actually change the experience of our lives.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll tell you how I think what's most changed within me and what's reduced my suffering the most is how I apply this work to my relationships. So I'll tell you a story that doesn't make me look good, but I'll tell it anyway.
Those are the most fun. I'm taking a
Yeah.
sip of my coffee.
Every time I have to tell this story, I kind of cringe, but I think it's important. It's cathartic for me to tell this story. So it's about my mom, and
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. This is in the
okay,
book, everybody. If you want a
yeah,
real
it
detailed,
is in the
you want
book.
to really savor this. Go ahead.
Yeah. I'll tell you, and I'll actually tell you something that's not in the book. Remind me. I'll tell you something that's not in the book about how this concluded. Just remind me. Don't let me forget. So a few
Okay.
years ago, my mom had her 74th birthday, and I wanted to do something nice for her. So I decided that I was going to get her some flowers. The problem was, I was in Singapore at the time, still am in Singapore, and my mom was in Central Florida, where I grew up. Now, getting flowers from Singapore to Central Florida is not easy. You have to call the local florist and find the best one and the reviews and make sure that the arrangement is just so that she would love it. But I did all that. I went to bed and I expected the next day that she was going to tell me what a wonderful son I was and how nice the flowers were. That's not what happened. What happened was I called her up. I said, "Happy birthday, Mom. Did you get the flowers I sent?" To which she said, "Yes, I got the flowers. Thank you. But just so you know, those flowers were half dead. So don't order from that florist anymore." To which I said, "Well, that's the last time I buy you flowers."
This is like the quintessence. I feel like many people have had this type of experience where it
Yeah,
like starts in one direction and how quickly it can go awry, right?
exactly.
Like it
We
only
may
took
actually
one sentence.
we may be separated at birth here. Maybe we have the same mom. I'm not sure. It sounds like maybe that's the case.
No, if my mom is listening. I do not.
No, not your mom, of
Yes.
course. Okay. I think many people have had these interactions in their day-to-day life. They're the people that are closest to us. Sometimes we don't treat so nice, and so I said something that I later regret. And my wife was sitting next to me. She was on this birthday call to my mom, and she turns to me and she says,
She's
"Hey,
kicking you. Yeah.
yeah." So this was after the call. She says, "Would you like to do a turnaround on this?" To which I say, "No, I do not want to do your touchy-feely hocus-pocus mumbo jumbo. I need to vent, right? When someone offends us, you are supposed to speak your truth. You're not supposed to keep it inside. You're supposed to tell them how you feel." Well, it turns out that that's not true. That when we vent about people, we are reinforcing this effigy. We're building this effigy of them that doesn't serve us because we don't see people as they are. We see people as we believe they are. The power of attention, that beliefs will shape truly what we see in the world and in other people. So I didn't vent. I sat down and I used a technique called inquiry based stress reduction. Inquiry based stress reduction is the scientific version, if you will, of a technique called The Work by Byron Katie. And even Byron Katie has channeled a technique that's over 2,500 years old. Aristotle did something very similar. So it's over 2,500 years, this technique. But she really kind of codified it into these four questions. So here's what I did. The first
Okay.
thing I did was write down the belief. And that's usually the trickiest part. So you can do this yourself. Anybody listening now, if you have an area of your life where you feel like there's a really good excuse why you're not able to do something that you know you could do, but you haven't done. So maybe it's moderate your use with your cell phone. Maybe it's be more present with your family. Maybe it's start that business or write that book or get in shape or whatever it is that you have that goal, repair that relationship like it was in my case, but it hasn't happened. And you think you have a really good reason why that's not happening. I want you to just write down that that fact, that reason that that you're stuck, for example. So I did that. I wrote down my mother is too judgmental and hard to please. Now, inquiry-based stress reduction asks us four questions. The first question is it true? Duh, what a stupid question. Of course it's true. Catherine, back me up here. It's
Did you hear
clear.
what she said?
Did you hear what she? Thank you. Obviously, she was being
Obviously.
right. It's a fact that she was too judgmental. Who does that? If somebody gets you flowers, you say thank you very much and you shut up. You don't have to complain about it. She was
No,
very
you
clearly,
add like, and you're the best son ever.
there
You
you
add that.
go. Thank you. I'm
Right.
so glad we see eye to eye on this.
Yeah, we could just stop talking right
Yeah, okay, next episode.
now.
Here's the problem. There are more questions. We're not done. The second question is it absolutely true? Well, absolutely. That means in all cases, without fail, no exceptions. I had to admit, I couldn't be confident, right? Maybe there was another reason that she said what she said. That wasn't that she was trying to be rude and judgmental and hard to please. Maybe, she did just say a statement of fact, and she had thanked me after all. So maybe she was trying to be helpful, not hurtful, so that I wouldn't get scammed by this florist. The third question is, who am I when I hold on to this belief? So how do I feel when I hold on to this belief? Well, when I hold on to the belief that my mother is too judgmental and hard to please, I feel short-tempered. I feel anxious. I feel like this 13-year-old version of myself, which I didn't really like. Now, the fourth question, who would I be without this belief? Well, if I didn't hold on to this belief that my mother is too judgmental and hard to please, if I had some kind of magic wand that I could tap my brain and poof, it disappeared, I'd feel a little better, actually. I'd be more myself. I'd be somebody that I actually am proud of, as opposed to a person who says things they later regret. So now in just 4 questions at about a minute, I learned that this thing that I was sure was wasn't a fact. It was just a belief. And that belief wasn't really serving me, and that I'd be way better off without it. But you see, getting rid of these limiting beliefs is really hard because the brain hates changing its mind. The brain hates changing its mind. Because evolutionarily, your brain doesn't care if you're happy, doesn't care if you're flourishing, doesn't care if you're, repairing broken relationships and meeting your full potential. Your brain doesn't care about any of that. It just wants to keep you alive. So it's going to keep you doing exactly what you've always been doing and thinking and believing what you've always been believing, because that's what's safe. Because if it worked in the past, it'll work in the future. So, believing new things might lead to new behaviors, which is risky. So your brain is constantly pulling you back into these limiting beliefs because that's what served you in the past. So what inquiry-based stress reduction asks you to do is to just collect a portfolio of perspective. You don't have to change your mind. You're just collecting other potential beliefs, kind of like we collect Pokemon cards or baseball cards or stocks in our portfolio. You're just collecting other beliefs. How do you do that? You ask yourself, could, not is, but could the opposite be true? Could the opposite be true? So what's the opposite of my mother is too judgmental and hard to please? And again, you can do this about any limiting belief. The opposite is my mother is too judgmental and hard to please. How could that possibly be true? Well, maybe she was just trying to help me out, right? Like maybe she was just trying to be nice, actually, to make sure I didn't get scammed by this florist. So that's not necessarily being judgmental and hard to please. That's another belief. That's another perspective. Okay, here's the third belief. That the opposite of my mother being too judgmental and hard to please could also be and being too judgmental and hard to please.
Ooh. Ooh, that's
That
a
one's
tough
no
one.
fun.
How'd that feel?
That one sucked. Because again, my brain was fighting tooth and nail to say, that cannot be true. Can't it? Let's think about this. So I was in my head rehearsing since the night before that I deserved exactly the kind of effusive praise telling me that I was a wonderful son and the flowers were great. And when that praise didn't come, I lost it. So who exactly was being judgmental? I was. All right. Here's a fourth one. The opposite of my mother is too judgmental and hard to please could also be I am too judgmental and hard to please towards myself. Because you see, when this thing that I put a lot of time and money into didn't work out the way I had planned, I felt incompetent. I felt like I screwed up. And this is what's called a misattribution of emotion. That whenever we don't feel good inside, we attribute it to something outside. It's that person. It's the economy. It's politics. It's whatever. That's what I'm going to try and attribute the way I feel to. And that's exactly what I did to my mom. So now I've got 4 beliefs. I had 1. Now I have 4. Which one is true? All of them? None of them? Who cares?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Which one
And
is true?
Exactly, and it doesn't matter. You know why it doesn't matter? Because beliefs are tools, not truth. We spent so much time arguing about, well, when you said that, that hurt my feelings, and you need to do... It's pointless. It's pointless. We don't see reality clearly, our own reality clearly. How can we possibly see reality through someone else's eyes? So that first belief that my mother is too judgmental and hard to please only left me with one way out. She had to change so I could be happy. You haven't met my mom, Catherine, but I'm telling you, that ain't gonna, okay? If we wait for external circumstances to change so we can stop suffering, if you hold your breath, you're gonna suffocate. It doesn't work that way. So rather than stubbornly sticking to that one belief that I always had and I was looking for evidence to prove, hey, I've got 3 other beliefs that I could take out, try on, and see what happens. For example, so the definition of a limiting belief is a belief that lowers motivation and increases suffering. Who wants to be around someone you're convinced is too judgmental and hard to please? Not me. So what was my motivation level to work on that relationship with my mom? Nothing, right? I had very little motivation. Now, this doesn't mean I have to be with her every day. It doesn't mean I have to be best friends with her. It just means that when I consider the other 3 beliefs, suddenly I'm more motivated to work on that relationship with her and don't have to suffer in that relationship anymore. Because I realize that these other beliefs free me from that suffering. It doesn't require her to change so I could stop suffering. Now it's something that I could do myself. And so this limiting belief turned into a liberating belief that now I could choose, that increased my motivation to work on the relationship and decrease my suffering.
Well, the first reaction I have is to be very impressed that you did this, because I've been in situations where, you're in like heightened emotional state. Like I'll be really pissed off about something, and my husband, whom I love dearly, but he has been known to come to me in those moments and say, "Do you think you should meditate?" And I'm like, "I think you should meditate. I think your face should meditate. Like, get out of my space." So the fact that you were like open at all, I mean, maybe there was a beat between when you did this and when your wife mentioned
no,
it.
there definitely was a beat. Yeah, it's like telling someone to calm down. That has never worked in the history of the English language, telling someone to calm down. Right?
Yeah,
Never
even
worked.
if they're 100% correct,
Yes.
And I see myself doing that sometimes with our own daughter. It's like, maybe you should use some of those mindfulness tools that you talked about in class. And she's like, all right. I'm like, oh man, I'm doing the... So kudos to you.
Well,
To
this
reiterate,
wasn't immediate. Okay, just to be clear, this is why this technique works. Is because you sit down by yourself with your thoughts and a piece of paper, and you do this on your own. Because you're absolutely right. Our limiting beliefs are like our faces, right? We all have a face, but you can't see your own face. If I said right now, look at your face, you can't look at your face. You need something outside of you to reflect. You need a mirror. You need, Zoom right now to camera.
right,
to see
right,
your
right.
own
I was like, I can see my face.
Now
Is
you can.
distracting
Yeah,
on a
you're
Zoom
cheating.
call.
because we're on this call. But normally you can't look at your own face. Same goes for our limiting beliefs. You can see other people's limiting beliefs. Oh, you can see everybody's limiting beliefs, but you can't see your own because to you they feel like facts, right? But they're not facts. They're just limiting beliefs. So we need a process in order to help us through this.
Yeah. So to reiterate what you were saying in terms of these questions, if anyone wants to do this doing the work that you're talking about, is this belief true? Can I be certain this belief is true? How do I react when I believe this? Right? And then who would I be without this belief?
That's right. And then you do the turnaround, which is when we look for, could the opposite also be true? And again, we're not going to change our mind, right? Because again, you're going to find every reason why you're right. Instead, you're just collecting a portfolio, kind of like if you walk into a shoe store and you've got these old, beat up, smelly shoes with holes in them. So you need a new pair of shoes. Clearly, the shoes aren't working for you anymore, just like our limiting beliefs don't work for us anymore. We're not really sure why. You don't walk into a shoe store and say, oh, those are nice, let me get those. No, you try them, right? You see if they fit. And then you buy the shoes. And so that's what we can do with our beliefs. We can try them on. They don't have to be true. They don't have to be true. We can try them on and see how we feel. And as if they are true, because beliefs are tools, not true.
I think that's very helpful. And also, I feel like you've seen my shoes because I do need to get new ones. What's the thing you were going to say that's not in the book? I'm not letting that one go.
Okay, the thing that's not in the book is that when I was writing when I finished the first draft, I had to show my mom, right? I wasn't going to let her read this when the book is on the shelf. That would have been, World War III. So instead, I sent her the draft so that she could see it and hopefully give me her blessing. And I expected for her to do something kind of like what you did. Wow, that's so introspective, and that's so big of you to admit that this was your responsibility to take how your suffering was within you. And instead, she goes, "See, I told you those flowers were terrible."
Oh my, that's so funny. Did you ask her to do the work? Did you say, "Hey, mom"?
Nope.
"Hey, mom, I have a 4-step process for you"?
But it kind of brings up this, now I have, so part of a question I frequently get is like, how do you actually change those limiting beliefs, even if you know
Right.
them, even if you can see them? And we hear them all the time. We all have this little voice in our heads. I still hear those voices because I'm constantly being pulled into my limiting beliefs through passivity, as we all are. And so we have to have practices to remind us of these new liberating beliefs. So my new liberating belief, every time I, I feel that annoyance, like what my mom said, I feel that little pang that's causing me suffering in some way. One of the things that I constantly remind myself is that this little mantra, this little liberating belief, that love is measured by the benefit of the doubt. Love is measured by the benefit of the doubt. What does that mean? When
Yeah,
you
what does
say,
that mean?
yeah, yeah. And I think it's important because to me it's very meaningful. I'll explain
Mhm.
what I mean by that. But the point here is that you need to create a liberating belief that feels good to you, that feels authentic, that's helpful to you. When I say that to myself, love is measured by the benefit of the doubt, what I mean is that, well, let me back up. So I remember, when you ask yourself, what is love? Like, what does that mean? When I say, I love you, or I love you so much, what does that even mean when we say that? To me, love is measured by the benefit of the doubt because I remember the day when I felt probably the most love in my heart in my whole life was the day my daughter, she's 17. And I remember the day I held her, she was exactly this big, fingertip to my elbow. And I held her and I gave her first bath in the hospital. And I remember thinking that I love this little person just more than anything. And there's nothing that she could do to make me love her less. She would cry,
Mm.
she would poop, she'd need to be changed, she'd need to be fed. I didn't care. I just loved her so much. This new part of my heart opened up. And and I never took it personally when she did something I didn't like. I didn't like when she cried, but I knew I didn't blame her for crying. That's the only tool she had. She's a baby. What else could she do? Well,
Mhm.
why is it that when those babies grow up, which we all do, right? We're all just big babies. How come we don't
We are all
give?
just big babies.
We're all just big babies. And so she had the best tool at the time, which was to cry when she needed things. How could I possibly expect anything else? Just like my mom, when she acts the way she acts, best tool she's right? We all are just operating with the tools we have at the time. So love is measured by the benefit of the doubt. The more you love someone, it doesn't mean you have to roll over and let them do whatever they want. You can always remove yourself. That's always an option, right? You can tell that's totally fine. You have that opportunity, but you don't have to suffer. You don't have to suffer. Knowing that, at least for me, very helpful. It's like asking my mom to speak Latin. Mom doesn't speak Latin, okay? So why would I expect her to behave exactly the way I want her to talk to me? It's not going to happen,
Mhm.
right? So that's one of those daily liberating beliefs that I constantly remind myself that we're all operating with the tools we have, and love is measured by the benefit.
Mm, I see. And giving people a bit more grace. Yeah.
Right.
One thing I was very curious about when I was reading your book was this idea of luck, which seems to also relate to what we're talking about in a broader sense, which is that you talk about how some people just seem like they are lucky or they seem like good things happen to them, and then we might feel jealous of them, or we might just say, oh, well, he's just lucky. That's why that thing happened. I think this also ties into what you and I have both written about in terms of attention and choosing how you spend your attention and how you kind of present yourself to the world. But I was wondering if you could talk a bit about this concept that you actually can engineer your own luck, because I think that's very powerful, especially if anyone is feeling, I mean, not necessarily like engineer your own luck by you're going to win, at the on a slot
Kind
machine,
of.
but like in the sense of like how do you kind of engineer a life in which good things happen to you or you perceive good things happening to you and you're
Yeah,
able to feel more alive and also just better about the world,
for
become one of
sure.
those people to whom good things seem to happen. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Absolutely, yeah. So this is the first power belief, the power of our beliefs to shape what you see, and this is not metaphorical. That our beliefs literally shape what we perceive. They don't shape actual reality. They don't shape reality for other people, but your beliefs will shape
Okay.
what you perceive. And we see this time and time again that people who are on a diet see food as larger. People who are afraid of heights see distances as further. I can show
Hmm.
you the same image. It's called the coffer illusion, and the same exact image based on where you were born, you will either see squares or circles. Same image.
Wow.
So we see this demonstrated again and again and again because we don't see reality clearly. We see reality filtered through our beliefs. So as much as we like to say that seeing is believing, the opposite is just as true. That
Hmm.
you see what you believe you will see. And so this is demonstrated with luck. It's a perfect example. They did a study where the researchers gave two groups of people the same task. The task was to look through a newspaper and simply count the number of images. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many images do you see in this newspaper? Now, group one were people who believed they were lucky. Group two were people who believed they were unlucky. It wasn't a fact. The researchers didn't follow them around to determine if they were actually lucky or unlucky. They just
Had
believed,
to
they were
like flip a
self-confessed.
quarter
Yeah,
over and over and
exactly.
over
We
again,
didn't
and you're like,
ask
oh,
for
yep,
their
that's
life
the group.
stories or histories,
Yeah.
nothing. Just what do you believe? Do you believe you're lucky or unlucky? The people who believed they were unlucky to finish this task took 2.5 minutes. 2.5 minutes to count all the images in the newspaper. The people who believed they were lucky took 11 seconds. 2.5 minutes versus 11 seconds. Why the difference? Well, on page 2 of this newspaper, one of those images said, there are 43 images in this newspaper. Collect your reward. The lucky people saw it, they read it, they got it from their chair, they got their reward, and they were out the door in 11 seconds. The unlucky people, even though they had counted that image, they got the correct number of 43 images, they didn't process what the image said.
Hmm.
It never entered their conscious attention. So based on our beliefs filter what we are consciously aware of, what we perceive. So since writing this book, one of the things that my family says, another one of these liberating beliefs, whenever something good happens in my family, the three of us, we always say this little silly phrase. We say, everything good happens to us. So, we're going somewhere and there's no traffic. We go to a restaurant and there's no line. Something, my daughter gets a good grade on a test. I don't know, all these little things that happen throughout our life. We just casually say, you see, everything good happens to us. Is that objectively true? No. It's not true that everything good happens to us. There's lots of bad things that happen to us just like anybody else. But what are we paying attention to? What are we focusing on? What are we more likely to see more of when we're looking for it? So just
Hmm.
as we will create lucky things when we are looking for them, not that they statistically happen more, but we see them more often to the point where they actually can affect our outcomes, where we see opportunities that others don't. For example, we call this entrepreneurial alertness, that there are certain people who have these entrepreneurial traits who see metaphorical $100 bills all over the place, right? They have business ideas, they see opportunities other people don't see. And so,
Hmm.
for the rest of us, we just see pavement, they see $100 bills. And so it really does affect how you see reality because we filter our reality through our beliefs.
So, what's a practical strategy for how to do that? Because it's one thing to say, okay, you should go more into that entrepreneurial mindset, or you should become that person who sees the text in the image that says, go collect your reward now. But do you have any practical strategies, like in the people could even try today to start to shift their belief, but also their habits or practices to make this more likely to begin to adopt that belief, if that makes sense? Like,
Sure. Yeah. So one is,
yeah.
I think, having these mantras throughout your life, like having, I had to put these on
Hmm.
a post-it note in various places, about my work, about my limiting beliefs, about exercise. I used to be morbidly obese. I was, not just overweight, but actually obese. And so I had to change my mind in many different ways in order to overcome these challenges. All my books I write because I'm struggling, right? Research is me search. And so I write
Yeah,
these
that is
things,
guilty as
right?
charged over here. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I'm looking for these solutions. So one I think is having these new liberating beliefs, and then there's some practices. For example, one I learned from Tina Seelig at Stanford was that she uses gratitude as a way to inspire luck. So she's kind of legendary. And I went to Stanford for business school, and then later I taught there. And she's kind of a legend for thanking people all the time. Like she'll write
Mm.
little notes and she'll send emails and she'll give you a phone call or text message, and she'll just whenever she never hesitates when she wants to tell you that she's thinking of you or thanking you did something nice, or she wants to just just a little thank you. And so what's interesting about this is that she has created luck for herself on a practical basis. So by sending a little handwritten note that takes maybe 30 seconds to write up, you know, if someone has an opportunity on their table and they're thinking about, who should I call for this opportunity, and her little thank you note is next to that person. Well, guess who they're going to call? So in a way, you're
Hmm.
engineering your own luck. And we see this actually, there's studies with salespeople that it turns out that salespeople can engineer, I think on average, 60% of their sales in this study were what's called provoked luck. They didn't
Huh.
expect to create this opportunities, but by having these practices, they generated their own luck. And in retrospect, it seemed like, oh my God, it just fell into their lap. What a lucky person. But in fact, when they traced back how these leads turned into sales, how they converted, it was because they did something believing that it may possibly lead to some kind of outcome. Not because it's a fact, but because it's a belief.
Huh. I personally am a big fan of the thank you note, just in
Mm,
general.
right?
Like I'm always trying to get our daughter. I mean, she does. She, writing little thank you notes or also, I mean, this is tangential, but I feel like the actual thank you note is a lost art
Mm,
that is so important and so lovely and it's delightful, even
yeah.
just in and of itself. But you also make me think about something I talk about a lot in my own work, which is in order to be lucky, in order to have, so many people, as we were saying at the beginning, they feel disconnected, they feel lonely, they feel like the world is just a dumpster fire, there's
Mm,
nothing positive. And I always recommend on a day-to-day basis for the former part of that, put your phone down and just look up, which is
mm,
basically seeing people around. But I like the idea of coupling that practice of actually being more present in the world with the belief that there are good things that can happen when you look up. There are little micro interactions that you could have that would be positive, um, if you put your phone down. I also was very curious when I was reading your book about how we can use this power of belief and changing our beliefs or questioning them to kind of calm us all down a bit. Right now, it can really feel like the world is a dumpster fire, which, in many cases that is, but there are also other things happening. I'm wondering if you have any practical advice about people who are just feeling really down and their
yeah.
belief is very negative right now about how things are going. Like, what would you say to people like that about something they might do or try?
Yeah.
Again, with the acknowledgement that facts are facts, but we have control over our own beliefs.
Yeah. So I'll say two things. One, you really want to test whether the things you think are facts are facts. And I think a book every human being should read is Factfulness by Hans Rosling. And
Mm.
he did a fascinating study. He asked the most educated people he could find, college professors, PhDs. They're supposed to be super smart. And he asked them a battery of questions about the state of the world. How is education? How are education levels in Africa? What's how many countries are democratic? How many wars? How many people are dying because of disease? Female empowerment? All these different questions about the state of the world that a smart person should have a pretty good grasp of, especially someone who has a PhD. And he found that these PhDs, the most educated people on the planet, did worse on this exam about the state of the world than monkeys. They literally did worse than random chance. Why? Because we do not have a grip on reality. We all think the world's a dumpster fire, and it's not. Actually, it's not. Are there problems? Of course there are problems. But your brain is incapable of absorbing actual reality. Right now, your brain is absorbing 11 million bits of information. 11 million bits of information is like reading every word of War and Peace every second twice. It's a
Oh
tremendous
my.
amount of information. The light entering your retinas, the sound of my voice in your ears, the ambient temperature of the room. Your brain is processing all that. But your conscious attention is only 50 bits of information. That's one sentence per second. So what you call reality is 0.000045% of the available information to you. Your brain
Thank you
does
for doing the
not.
math for everybody,
Yeah, there you
because
go.
that was going to be rough in the head. Yeah.
I did it beforehand. I didn't
Yeah.
do that in my head.
Yeah.
but but what this says is that what we call reality is not reality. It's this tiny pinhole of attention, which even that what enters conscious attention is also filtered by even a smaller percentage of what the media tells us is reality. The media doesn't tell us what we need to know. And I don't care if it's social media or the New York Times or CNN or newspapers, they are not in the business of keeping you informed. They are in the business of keeping you consuming their media. All media is about selling
Hmm.
eyeballs to advertisers. That's what the news media does. Okay. And that's bad. Can be used rightfully, but it's not reality. Reality is things are getting better. I know it doesn't seem like it. Seems crazy, right? Because my political opponents are causing my suffering, and this war that has nothing to do with me, thousands of miles away, that's causing my suffering, and this injustice and this thing, all these things are causing my suffering. And yet, factually, it takes time, right? But the long arch of history, as Obama told us, bends towards justice, right? Not that we should be passive and not act. We absolutely can act. There's nothing wrong with that. But it shouldn't cause us suffering. You know why? Because when we hold these limiting beliefs that things are getting worse, does that motivate us? No, it increases our suffering. Why would I want to work on something that's just getting worse? Country's awful, never going to get better. Polarization's increasing. I'm never going to fix anything. You know what that does? That makes us not want to go do something we can actually affect. It makes us less likely to go volunteer at the soup kitchen or help the elderly neighbor or go to our church and meet other people and see if they might need help or participate in something we can control because we're worried about a freaking war 5,000 miles away. It's got nothing to do with us. So first, I think step number one is actually ask yourself, what is reality and what's our zone of control and agency that we can actually do something about, as opposed to just increasing suffering and decreasing our motivation and sitting inside and scrolling the news and consuming more and more terrible things that we see on our screens. That's one. And then I think the second thing is to behave in accordance with the belief that serves us. That I don't know if it's a fact if things are getting better or worse, right? We can argue about that all day long. Let's say it's true. Things are getting worse. We're on a bad path. Let's say I grant you that. Do I really want to live that way? Like, why can't I choose a belief? Because it's about the future. Nobody actually knows, is AI going to take our jobs and the economy is crashing and the war and the Supreme Court and the president? Do I actually know for a fact that the future is going to be worse? Could it be better? It might. Not an absolute. It might. And like everything in your brain is saying, no, this guy doesn't know anything. Doesn't he see what's going on? I see it. I know what you're talking about. But does it serve you? Doesn't serve me. I would much rather increase my motivation around the things that I can do something about and not suffer every damn day from this stuff I can't do anything about.
And I think that really ties in. I mean, as you're saying, in order to change that belief, you have to be very mindful about where you're training your attention. And that if it seems overwhelming to think about changing a belief or even questioning a belief, honestly, maybe a place to start is actually to experiment in the next couple of days with paying attention to how you're paying attention. What are you paying attention to, right? Like, are you, as you're saying, doom scrolling the news, or could you look up and see that it's springtime? I mean, really, even small things. And I think that I'm kind of trying to put together what you're saying for myself in real time here, but like, if you get into that practice of choosing and being more intentional about how you're spending your attention, that can start to inform your beliefs, which then it becomes a cycle where then you start to see, I think as you're saying, engineering your own luck, you start to see more opportunities, you see more positivity, your suffering goes down, you have more motivation, and then that reinforces this more positive belief.
That's right.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think that's the biggest revelation I think that I had writing this book over the past 6 years is that, wait a minute, I can choose. I can't choose facts. Can't choose facts. Those facts are facts. Those are objective. But I can choose my beliefs about the future, can't I? Because I don't know what's going to happen. I can choose to believe that people are good, even if sometimes they're not. I can choose to believe that I can help others, even though I can't help everybody. Why can't I believe those things?
That's really very thought-provoking and makes me think that I could stand to do that too. Nir, thank you so much for your time today and for writing this book and sharing your thoughts and research. I'm wondering if you can just let my listeners know, where can they find out more about you and your work? Where can we find you? In addition to everyone going out and buying Beyond Belief, in addition to Hooked and Indistractable, but where can they find you?
I appreciate it. Yeah, so my website is nirandfar.com. Nir, spelled like my first name, Nir, and far.com. And actually, I'm going to send you a link to a 5-minute belief change guide. It's totally free. You don't have to buy anything. It's just a nice way to get you started in terms of identifying those limiting beliefs and turning them into liberating beliefs. And so I'll put the link in the show notes. Hopefully you can share that as well.
Amazing. We love a free toolkit over here. Thank you again so much. And it's been wonderful to speak with you.
Likewise, Catherine. Thank you so much for having me.